I mean, the last time we did it was what, 2018?
Dude, that's what I was just saying. I think it was like early 2019, I think.
We were just moving out of our house.
The day we were moving out, like Connor was just fluffing about outside too.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I think we like went out in the alley and he took some pictures of us, right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Well, we were flying out that day too, Fletch, that night.
Yeah, where were we going? Sarawak, maybe.
Back to Sarawak. Yeah.
Yeah. And you guys were just moving out. I remember that, man.
that day was nuts because we're moving out that day, and then somehow we're also flying that night. I remember it because when we did the podcast, I made a little video. I made a little like a vlog.
Right.
And we're flying that night. Yeah.
You guys were doing like not daily, but like you were doing a lot of vlogging at that time, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, because we're flying and doing a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot to film. Like there's no point vlogging since the pandemic. It's literally my home.
Yeah.
And Fletch on Zoom.
Well, I mean, so this is maybe like a good way to jump into the actual conversation, because I was re-listening to some of our old podcast earlier this morning, and you guys were talking about how after the Sarawak EP and after, having this kind of journey along with the creation of the music, that, you made a little mini documentary, and you were talking about how like you wanted to have future releases maybe tied into other travels, and how you were moving out of your LA place and going back to Australia, but you were kind of all over the place and being nomads. And it seemed like the intention was for there to be more of that in the coming years, which I feel like you must have had to reshape that plan at a certain point.
Yeah, that happened. that really did. We had to re-look at life differently.
Yeah. I mean, were there plans for future kind of like, I don't even know what you would call it, like, music journeys where you kind of tie in travel into music creation that had to get shelved?
We didn't have anything like hard scheduled, like that we were definitely going to be doing. I think we really wanted to. So that conversation must have been, had we done the Sarawak documentary by that point?
By the time we had the conversation, yeah.
So we weren't flying to Sarawak that day because we were moving. We were about to move Australia. Go back to Australia and then move into a new place in America. We went to a different place in Hollywood. But yeah, so we kind of always wanted to, and we were speaking about it the other day as well. Just getting back into doing some of that kind of stuff as the world opens up again, going and doing another similar style project to Sarawak, where we, go and find a cool place with interesting sounds and culture and go and, get inspired and write some stuff. So I think definitely still want to do that. But for now, we've just really, really been enjoying being home in Australia. It was really helpful for us to kind of have our roots back down for writing the album. Not being transient for a while, I think was quite important.
The forced grounding was good.
Yeah. That's. I mean,
I think it was good for a lot of people.
What I was about to say.
There's a silver lining in there somewhere.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, man. And I think, we gotta look for those. I mean, what do you think, if we're talking hypothetically, like say COVID hadn't happened and you had continued on with the hectic nomad lifestyle where you're traveling a lot, playing a lot of shows, less big chunks of time to execute a project. Do you think, was the album still a plan, or was the album kind of a result of this time?
The album was never really a plan. It was an idea that we always had ever since we started the SLUMBERJACK project, but never really sat down, reflected, and go, this is the time. Like, we never had a timeline. We never said SLUMBERJACK needs to be putting out an album in 2021 or 2022. We just got like, it would be cool one day. And it's always like one day. And we never really talked about it because all we did was drop a single, go on tour, drop an EP, too busy, back on tour. but it was always in the back of our heads. And then when we, came to Australia, we're like, and then March hit. I remember we're supposed to fly back to LA, and then just the whole world just went to shit. And then I think our flight was in a week or something, and then we're just like, well, there's no point packing now. We're just going to stay in Australia. And then a couple months later, we realized this was going to be a lot longer. So we got ourselves a studio where Fletcher and I can go and meet up and work. And then from there, it became this looks like it's going to be for a year. So let's try. And then, next minute, it's 2 years now.
Right.
I think to answer your question earlier in terms of, what would we have done? Like, we definitely wouldn't have written the album. We'd probably, I don't know if we probably wouldn't still be in America, but I think there wasn't like a clear reason for us. We may still be in America, but there wasn't really a clear reason for us to come home. We'd always sort of felt like we'll go to America for say 2 to 3 years. And kind of when COVID hit was like right around that time. But like, I think without that kind of signpost or that kind of divider of time, we wouldn't have, we would have been like, oh, we'll stay for 3 more months. We'll stay 6 more months, and then it just kind of keeps getting pushed out. There was no impetus to make any change because things were going well and we were ticking along. We had a nice place and great friends. So yeah, I think it's been, as terrible as the whole pandemic has been, it's been a great, like a signpost where it's a clear split, like before and after COVID. And it's given us the chance to, not that after COVID exists yet, but it's given us the chance to kind of reinvent ourselves rather than just sort of being like the frog in boiling water who just slowly, doesn't realize that things are getting hot. It's kind of like, take a deep breath, change things up, just really think about like, okay, what is Slumberjack to us? We may not be able to tour for the next 2 years, 3 years. Is this something that we want to like commit to pushing through, or do we want to make other plans now and reshape the rest of our lives? And obviously the album was a commitment to push through.
Oh yeah.
And I think we sort of got a chance to really decide like what Slumberjack was to us, what we wanted it to be going forward. And actually just yesterday, we kind of like started the new season or the new flavor of Slumberjack, which is, the album campaign that like sort of officially started yesterday, where we rolled out, a whole bunch of, basically just changed our DP, and that's a very symbolic thing for us. It's always been symbolic for us.
It's like a once a year thing for us.
When we change our DP, that is like the start of the new campaign or the start of a new cycle for Slumberjack.
Well, wait, what is DP?
Display picture.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
Like our profile picture. Sorry.
Right.
Maybe that's an Australianism. But it was DP like a very symbolic,
Asian like, too.
Coming out of COVID into this next phase of album and tour and just the way that we want to position ourselves, less as just like EDM DJs and more as like a 2-person band.
It's
not meaning that we have to play band instruments, but
right. Well, it's interesting, like a few things in what you just said there, because I've always kind of thought of you guys as a band for some reason, like I don't know why. It's just kind of that vibe. I think the way you present yourselves, the way the music comes across, like it never really seemed exactly like an EDM DJ to me, even though you do obviously fit into that space. I don't know. I was actually surprised because I don't know anything, but I for some reason I thought this wasn't even your first album. In my head,
that's like good. That's interesting.
You just put out albums, and so I don't know. You've always been in that category for me. I don't know why that is.
That's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah, I think also it's different with the colleagues that we know in America / Australia. I think in the sphere of the, let's just use the word EDM loosely, or dance music, in the sphere of dance music, we're not exactly the hard stuff when it comes to the American, touring circuit, right?
Yeah.
And we tour with great guys there, like Boombox Cartel and Jaws, and these guys are heavy hitters, right? But in America, I think we're closer related to like the guys that the likes of like Deza and Louis the Child, and so there's more song based. But if you were to revert it to Australia, we're still considered pretty hard. It's even softer here. It's even more indie. It's even more like indie electronica here.
Right.
So it's like Fletch and my perspective here is like we need to then write more of these stuff, which is something that's more natural to us.
Well, you guys have such a great history of that indie electronic sound in Australia too. I mean, going all the way back to the Bloghouse years, the indie electro years, which is an era I talk about all the time on this podcast because that's kind of when I really was coming up too. And I remember every hot band was coming out of Australia at that time. Like every song, everything that was on the blogs, like for a couple of years there, it seemed like it was wall to wall Australian artists. Whether it's you can name them, Bag Raiders or Empire of the Sun or
presets.
Yeah, presets, all of those and a million more.
Sneaky Sound System.
Yeah, Midnight Juggernauts, like
Midnight Juggernauts,
yeah. So many, man. And it makes me wonder, how much of that were you exposed to in your guys' early years? Like what was going on in Australia musically when you guys were kind of first coming onto the scene?
Wow. What happened was, I think it was just towards the end of that era that you just did, the Bloghouse era that you just mentioned. It wasn't the end. There was no end. They're still touring right now. These guys are still writing, amazing songs and are very successful now. But when we came in, I was sort of exposed to the stereosonic side. In terms of dance music, I went from doing classical to doing some like actual band work, like cover singing in pubs and stuff with like old bandmates. And then dance music was like straight up Laid Back Luke. I got hit with Tiesto, David Guetta. So like those really bright, electro sounds. And Porter Robinson was Complextron and Madeon. And if Fletch was doing sort of that too, but he had glitch hop influences. He had some like bass influences.
Like Cone Sound and these kind of guys.
Yeah, still sick. And then when we eventually linked up, I think that was a couple years. That would be a couple years since that era. So 3 or 4 years. That's when Wave Racer and Flume started coming out. Like that's where that future based quote unquote is the at its peak,
right?
Or actually not the peak. It was
not
the
peak. No, it was the beginnings. Yeah, it was kind of like I was turning 18 right in the middle of that. Like the first electronic music show I ever went to was Bag Raiders supporting the presets.
Oh wow!
Which actually the Bag Raiders never ended up playing. It was Architecture in Helsinki, which also another sick band. But that was the kind of lineups. That was like the first show I went to, and it was such a moving time in Australian dance music, which kind of I feel like put us on the map and sort of paved the way for that next generation of I remember Morgan had, when we very first started our very first few studio sessions, we'd like drive to go get lunch and Morgan would have the Flume the Flume album as a CD in his car, and we'd listen to it and be like, oh man, it's so cool. Maybe we can like be this or do this as our thing, this style, and like Wave Racer and
because we came from very different roles. Fletcher was doing the hard-ish stuff, like glitch hop, cone sound stuff, and I was trying to do big room house.
Right.
And like we did two separate styles, and we thought it was just going to be like a one-off collaboration. But they eventually just became SLUMBERJACK, which is like
the point of the name was that we were supposed to be making the opposite of heavy music. It was supposed to be sleepy, chill beats.
Yeah. It's so interesting, man. I mean, how did you guys actually meet? Because we talked last time about how you both won the local DJ competition 1 year after each other and all that. But do you guys remember the first time you actually met each other?
Yeah.
Do you remember exactly the first time, Fletch? Or all I remember was correct. But like, did I come up to you? Do you come to what? Or
okay. Well,
because all I remember was the photo.
Yeah, so
we locked eyes.
Perth Dance Music Event. Perth Dance Music Awards.
Yeah.
Not happening anymore, but we both went because it was like a thing to do because you want to be seen at the big event in your city of DJs and electronic dance music. And I remember seeing Morgs, and I knew that he was the winner. Someone told me. I don't even know who I was there with. Maybe Scotty or Bart.
Yeah. Vince?
Anyway. Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
I remember Morgan was wearing these like hectic blue contact lenses. And I was like, damn, this guy looks sharp. Like this guy, and he had like this big, is it called a queef? Is that the name of the hairstyle? A quaif?
A quaif? A quaff?
A quaff, I think, yeah. A queef is something else.
Definitely not a queef.
Queef is a little different.
I always thought that was weird. I was like, why would they name those two things the same? It's a weird word. Anyway, and so I was like, damn, this guy looks sharp. Looks like he's pretty hot stuff. I'll go introduce myself, see what's up, network, And
network.
He kind of, the first time we went to the studio together, he kind of told me about like booking agents and like PR people and record labels. And I was like, man, what the hell is all this stuff? Like I just make music and upload to SoundCloud. And he kind of,
the best.
You had like stickers from like a concrete.
Started with clay, concrete.
Like a booking agent company. And I was like, man, how do you like know what a booking agent is and all this stuff? Because I was just thinking I'm going to make music and get booked to play clubs in my local city, and that'll be that.
Well, wait, Morgan, how did you know about all that stuff?
Because when I was in Malaysia, I had this world music band. I didn't know about it, and I was the same. I was like 16 or 17, and I was playing percussion and piano and just a few. I played even like the yidiki or the didgeridoo as well. And so I joined this band, and then in that band there was a manager, and this manager was the one that got everyone in together, like organized, scheduled rehearsals, scheduled shows. And then this person would speak to an agent that speaks to world music festivals and different conferences. So I was like, well, if we as a small little ethnic band had that, because the world music scene is pretty developed in that sense. It's not as big, but there is a lot of conferences going on, people talking about culture and
sure.
And then there was photo shoots, and then there was a PR campaign. So PR is like you just go on newspapers, right? And then like local community radio shows. So then when I came to Australia, when I moved to Australia, I was like, surely David Guetta playing at Tomorrowland. It's not just him on SoundCloud and people go like, hey, you want to play Tomorrowland for $100,000? Like, I was like, not
it's very logical.
I mean, it made sense. Like, his number, he's like, Tomorrowland's calling. It's like, hello?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hang on, Coachella's calling.
Yeah. I got to call you back. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, and then when we did the DJ competition, there was this guy running it. I was like, this guy looked like one of those guys, one of the music guys that doesn't write music, but runs the business. So then when I met Fletch, I was like, if we do this, there are like a couple things we need. We need to get out good music first and hold it. And we need a PR team to get people to talk about our music. We need a manager to make stuff happen and agents to get shows. I have no idea. I was just like, it seems like, it just felt like that was the path to go. I was like, it's kind of the path to be a legitimate artist. Like we were kids.
Right.
We hadn't, no true aspiration to turn it into the project that it is today.
Well, how did you assemble that initial team then? Because I totally get that sort of just like self-assuredness of being young and being like, yep, this is the plan, this is how we'll do it, it's going to work great. But that sometimes that confidence is not backed up by the work for a while to come. So for you guys, how did that manifest? Was there like a first thing that really made people start taking you seriously?
Yeah. So we put out the like SLUMBERJACK EP,
the first one,
which was like 4 songs which we worked on, which were like by today's standards they weren't that great, but I will give myself credit back then that they were very different to what other people were putting out. It was very unique in its style. Like it was a novel style of music. It wasn't house music. It wasn't
even future bass, was it, Fletch? Like we tried our best to create the Flume sound and we failed terribly, but luckily we came into this sound.
And I think like what I always like tell, we people often ask us, how did you get out there? How did you get started? And it's like the number one thing that like kind of always sticks with me is it's as much work to get from 1,000 plays to 10,000 plays as it is to get from 10,000 to 100,000 and 100,000 to 1 million, and then 1 million to 10 million. And then like, it's the same step size really. So like our very first EP was like one of the best song on it had 6,000 plays on SoundCloud, which to me at the time, I was like, this is sick. Like, this is amazing.
It was more than anything we had on SoundCloud personally too.
And we sort of like, there was like a local, two early groups that sort of helped us, a local Perth blog, who actually, are pretty prominent in Australia, but they're based in Perth, which is Parlor Rats.
I know them.
So like they
do a lot
of content. Yeah. They were like writing articles about our music because it was novel and unique. And a label also based in Perth called Die High Records, who they sort of like released or secured the remix package for the very first Wave Racer tracks before he blew up in Australia, and kind of had some ins with a few cool artists like Mr. Carmack sort of was like in contact with them, and Jemba. So
I think they released some tracks with Jemba too.
Yeah. So they liked our music and sort of put us on and got us remixes for some of these artists and got cool artists to remix our songs. And so those two things kind of like took us to that like next shell or level out. That was like the 10,000 plays region. And then from there, we were able to fly to Sydney for the Australian Electronic Dance Music Conference. Is that what it's called?
No, EMC. It's the Electronic Music Conference.
Electronic Music Conference.
Sydney, yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of timed around the biggest electronic music festival in Australia, Stereosonics. They'd have speakers like Steve Aoki, Porter Robinson, big artists who were touring.
Skrillex was there, Foreign Beggars, Cruella. We remember meeting all of them.
So we kind of got to like network there, and we met our first label. We met our first booking agent at this conference. And for me,
we met a bunch of managers.
Man, I don't know if we should be spending $1,000 to fly to the other side of the country and do this stuff, but like, that was the best thing we could have done. Just put ourselves on the national picture at least.
That's cool to hear. I mean, I actually like that story a lot because I tend to be a little jaded about those conferences and like generally like networking opportunities in general. But you're absolutely right that, I mean, whether it's a conference or whether it's an event or whatever, sometimes those collecting places of people, sometimes you just get a critical mass of people doing the same thing. And that is sometimes that's where those magic connections can happen.
I think with a small difference though, with that, when we did this conference, we went with the guy who was running the DJ competitions, who sort of became our pseudo first manager.
Sure.
Who sort of knew a few people there and was able to say like, let's have a sit down with these people. Let's have a sit down with these people. The other thing is that we already had that music out, which had kind of gotten a bit of interest. And our current booking agent, who was also our first booking agent, just cold hit us up and was like, I want to meet you guys. Are you coming to EMC? Let's go meet. And we went and met with him, and he was like, I want to book you. So that was kind of lucky that he just found us and was like, I want to work with you. And he's still our booking agent to this day. And like, I do kind of agree with like the jadedness about these conferences, because I think it's very different now as it was back then, because I think the number of people in this scene and the number of artists starting out in this scene has like exponentially multiplied. It's a lot harder to get your foot in the door. There's a lot more competition out there. And I always still remember from that first time we went to that conference, I saw this kid go up to like some label exec and give him a USB and was like, hey man, like listen to my music. And the kid kind of like walked off, and I saw the guy like just absolutely roll his eyes to his mate and like put it in his back pocket or something. And I was like, damn, man, this is brutal.
You're rough out there. Yeah.
So brutal. And I was like, that's kind of how it is though. Like, yeah.
I think we, at our age now, Fletch, I think we say it like we're super old, but like we're jaded as well, right? Because There was some element of luck in there for us.
Huge element.
And the naivete gave us that confidence.
Yeah.
You know, it had we known what we knew now, the fear of going to a conference like that will be absolutely, like, it will be scary.
Of course.
But we had this confidence in us because somehow I was like, Fletcher, we can't do this. Like, musically, we can't do this. We just we need polishing. We need practice. We need polishing. One of the funniest story was that the label that we're assigned to right now, Sweat It Out, was the first label we met. And then they very politely rejected us and said we needed work. And I remembered that day. And Sweat It Out, if you're listening to this, we love you. I was just like, they have no idea. They have no idea what they're missing.
Yeah.
And I was just so cocky in the sense that I was like, well, they'll see one day. But then now when we look back at the demo that we submitted, they were absolutely right.
Sure.
It just took time for us to, calibrate our ears to be able to detect if that's a good piece of work, or you're just too close to the project because you spent 3 months working and slaving away at it. You just think everybody has to, you have the right to make people like it.
Well, and to give you guys some credit, there must have been something there for, say your first booking agent to reach out to you, like cold call you, that kind of thing. Like, how, talking about group dynamics, the way you two work together, what was it that was exciting when you first got together? Could you tell that you worked well together? Was there some kind of spark?
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, the music that we wrote together just performed way better than the music we wrote separately. I mean, Morgs, I don't even know if Morgs had, like, I'd released songs.
I didn't release. I bootlegged.
Oh, yeah.
And just like kind of nothing happened. And then we sort of realized pretty quickly that, like, we need to go all in on this, all in musically. Like, this makes the most sense. Not that I would, and this is another topic to talk about, but not that I would recommend going all in on a music career if you,
and
straight off the bat.
Never would.
Yeah, you got to be real careful recommending that.
I was still at uni. Morgs had just finished, I think. I was still studying.
6 more months, yeah.
But in terms of, like, for the portion of my life that I'm focusing on for the portion of my life that I'm focusing on music, it needs to be all about SLUMBERJACK because that's where it's doing well. That's what's doing well. And so I just kind of like deleted my other project's Facebook page, which is weirdly hard. Like, it's still on my Facebook. You just can't delete a Facebook page.
Oh, it's the fucking worst, dude. I've tried to delete a Facebook page. Well, it started with, were you guys in the MySpace era at all? Because MySpace was the first one that just wouldn't let you delete your profile.
Yeah. It's just so bizarre. Like, I guess they don't have to, really, but, like, it seems weird that you don't have that option.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems shitty of that, it's like we all want to be able to control our online identities,
Totally.
It's one of those moments when we realize that we don't really control them,
I still have my top friends there.
Yeah, exactly.
That was
mine's
still brutal feature. Can you imagine that kind of feature now? Like, that is just horrible. Like, that is a horrible feature to put on primary school kids.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
But like, if you think about it back then, I mean, we're digressing, but if you think about it back then, it's more like, here's your online friends and then there's your real life friends. It's now so tightly integrated,
Yeah,
now your online friends is your real friends.
Yeah, it's like, what's the difference anymore? You're totally right. Because I remember, I mean, in the MySpace era, as far as like artist projects go, yeah, it was huge if you got in the top 8 of, an artist you really liked. And people would cycle them in and out all the time, It really was this weird, like, popularity contest that, would be, I'm sure, terrible if it was applied to children.
Horrendous.
Yeah, not good at all. Yeah, wait, what were we just talking about before we talked about MySpace? We were talking about... we were talking about your guys' dynamic in general.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about that and bring the new album into it as well and the writing process for that. Do you think the way you two have collaborated together has changed over the years? Like if you take what it looked like at the beginning to say what writing the new album was like, do you work differently in any noticeable way?
There's two parts to it. Part one, when I first met Fletch, I really didn't really understand Ableton. I was mucking around with like Logic Express, and then when Fletch came in, I already had like the Launchpad Ableton, like the light. Fletch came in with his laptop and taught me all that. And then I remember I was listening to Fletch's music and I was like, the drums are so cool. The only thing that needed to be worked on is the harmony, because he was using just a minor note. He was always just on a minor note. And I remember I was like, we can harmonize this better. And then I remember writing on the score sheet and Fletcher taking that photo and uploading it for the first time. He goes, like, learning music theory. And that was on Instagram for the...
Oh, wow.
Remember that, Fletch?
Yeah.
I don't know if he's... Yeah.
I was like getting in the studio with Morgs and he's writing like score sheets, like G major, B flat minor. And I'm like, what the hell, man?
Yeah.
I was just writing down and sitting at the piano. So that was that little beginning phase one of the SLUMBERJACK project. So Fletch was sort of always on the command center. And then he taught me. And I distinctly remember, I was like, I've learned way more sitting next to him than I have in any YouTube tutorials. So like for the first time, I learned what automation was. And then Fletcher's like, when you put a reverb on, can you hear the subtle difference? 5%. And I was like, I can't really hear it. It's like, it's in a room. I was like, oh, and my ear clicked. That was what that sounded like. It sounded a little bit different, but I was like, I didn't know what it was.
Right.
So that I could, Fletcher was teaching me auto filters and stuff, what a resonance meant. And then as we went along, I started doing more of that, and Fletcher started doing more harmonization stuff, like melody writing and songwriting. And it eventually became this synergy where we would both have two separate projects going on. And when either of us hit like a roadblock or like a writer's block, we just swap the project and keep going. And we would finish a project together. And I remember Fletcher sort of coming to my house when I was living this neighborhood called Crawley, and he would just go like, hey, I'm coming around after uni, and because I'm around the corner, I live next to uni too. He goes, I'm just going to come around and finish this record. We got to finish it by June 19th, which is my birthday. They go, we got to put the first song out. And so we already had a deadline. We already worked well together and wrote like that together. And I don't think it has changed since. It's still like, we meet up in the studio way less. We would meet up just to tackle on points. It was sort of like a like meeting. So we would, like, when the album was coming out, when we're coming out with the album, there'll be like 4 or 5 tracks at any given moment that we're working on. And we would meet in the studio every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And I think Thursdays and Fridays were free. This was after the pandemic and in Perth. Fletcher and I would look through the 4 things and we go, okay, song A, that snare needs work. We never actually say that. We actually never say the snare needs work. It seems like a meme.
Yeah.
But like something needs work, like the 4 things. So we tick it off and we go, what about this? We just test it out. And if it's done, we go, okay, why don't you deal with that? Let's look at song B. And we need all that. And if we delegate that, then that will be about like 4 or 5 hours worth of work. And then some admin stuff. And then we go home. Thursday, Fridays, we do it separately. And then we come back and we present the work. And then we swap again. It seems more efficient that way than to sit down and like point at a song, especially at the 60 to 80% mark. We tend to do that if the song's at the 90 to 99% mark. We tend to sit down and go, all right, so we have all these ideas fleshed out. Let's really polish it. So that week will be dedicated to that song.
It's so structured the way you're talking about it. I mean, I have to assume that's maybe something that's evolved over time. There's no way it was that structured at the beginning, right?
It wasn't that structured, right, Fletcher? We just we felt it. It was always like a feel thing.
Yeah, definitely in the beginning, it was a hobby for us,
Right.
So it was like after uni, meaning university. Well, obviously, we have to remember that these words do not exist in many places in the world.
That was a good American accent there, yeah.
So yeah, it'd be like after university or, when we had spare time. It's definitely evolved. I hate this word, like a job, but like it's definitely evolved into being, more of like, now that we're doing it full time, we have to be a bit more structured and clever about it.
Yeah.
Especially now, so that now Morgan's in Perth and I'm in Sydney, we definitely have to be scheduled about it, because we need to arrange times to like jump on Zoom.
Well, that's part of it too, right? Like we were talking before we started recording here about how you guys kind of accidentally got stuck across the country from each other for, for part of the process of writing this album, right? Like what happened there? What was the story?
So we had a show over here in Sydney, and I sort of came over a month earlier because my partner lives here. And Morgan came over for the show, and then he went back to Perth, and I was planning on staying just I was going to stay like an extra week or something. And we just had a couple of COVID cases come up. And where we're from, Perth, Australia, is very, very strict with COVID. I was telling you before
the state is really strict about it. In the last 24 months, like almost in the last 2 years, they've had probably like less than, realistically like 10 community cases, and then a few. I think we never cracked more than 50 in a outbreak. Yeah. No more than 50.
It's amazing.
Yeah, past the like initial hit, once they kind of got it under control, it's just been completely under control for the past 2 years. So they're obviously very strict with who can come and go. So as soon as there was COVID cases in Sydney, they literally shut the border and were like, no one from Sydney can come to Perth.
I made the cut.
So Morgan got back. I was like, let me just stay a few more days, because they also did things like you would go back to Perth or you'd go back home, and then after a few days of you being back, they'd be like, actually, we changed our mind. Anyone who was in Sydney after this date now has to do 2 weeks of quarantine.
Right.
And I didn't want that to happen to me if I'd already gone. So I was like, I'll stay a few more. And it was kind of just one of those situations where it just slowly got worse and worse, until eventually they were like, you literally cannot come back. Like, even if you're from WA, you like, nothing. Under no circumstances can you come back. So that's kind of what happened to me. And it stayed like that for a long time. And then I just got back.
You left in May, and I saw you for the first time in the flesh in December.
Wow.
At the end of December.
And that must have been the longest you guys had been apart from each other in what, a decade?
Oh, yeah.
So, you're right. We went from seeing each other like essentially almost every day. I mean, we lived together for many years. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, I hadn't even considered that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you were writing an album together. You're still talking all the time, but it is a crazy.
Actually, the album was mostly done. The album was mostly done by the time I moved. It was the mixing. We did a lot of mixing work remotely. Like talking with our mix engineer and doing notes. And then we've mixed the whole album in Dolby Atmos as well, for Apple Spatial Audio. So we did that remotely.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a second, because the Dolby Atmos thing, I first kind of learned about that a few years ago. I hosted this panel for the Glitch Mob, who had just released a Dolby Atmos version of their last album.
Of course.
And they were doing a listening party in like a Dolby Atmos theater. And they had this whole movie thing behind it. It was a whole thing, but it was really interesting because I talked to those guys about the process of mixing it, and they were showing me, even just what the studios look like. Like, how did that come into your guys' head to do it? What was the process? How is it different from mixing an album regularly?
I'll let Fletch talk about the process. Because towards the end, he went ham on it.
Yeah, so like we are in touch. We were in touch with Spotify and Apple, and we kind of like had a meeting with them, just sort of wrapping up the album, and they were telling us about this new thing that's coming out, spatial audio. Well, it had sort of just been released. So Apple's spatial audio uses the Dolby Atmos as kind of like the backbone of the engine of it. That's like the format.
Which is kind of like, a modern, like whole hyper modern surround sound, right? Like if we were trying to it's kind give of it the layman's version.
The way I started because I sort of knew not much about it at all when I first was introduced to it, and then took a really, really deep dive. But basically, for anyone who doesn't understand how it works, is Dolby Atmos is kind of like, it's surround sound plus. So, regular surround sound is like you hear your 5.1 system or your 7.1, which means you have 7 speakers, 1 subwoofer. Modern surround sound systems are 7.1.2. So you have your 7 speakers all around you, 0.1 subwoofer, 0.2 speakers on the roof. So you get these like overheads. But the problem with that format is that if you go into like a movie theater, they might have like 40, 50, 60 speakers.
Right.
But they've only got those 7.1.2 channels. So they've got 10 channels to work with, kind of thing. So you can't really, what ends up happening is you convert 10 channels to 50 speakers. 5 of those speakers play the exact same sound. So you can't really pinpoint the 3D-ness of things very accurately. So what Dolby introduced was this concept of being able to have 3D objects. So you can have on top of your surround sound mix, you can add in 3D objects where you can place them anywhere in the 3D space and it will accurately map them to the exact point where it's supposed to be based on whatever speaker system you're listening on. So if you're listening on a 50 speaker cinema, you're going to get sound coming from exactly that speaker. Or if you're listening on Apple Spatial Audio, they use all these like crazy filtering techniques to kind of make it sound like it's coming from exactly that direction. It kind of tricks your ears using just the sound pipe directly in. It kind of filters it and tricks your ear to make it sound like it's coming from a certain direction. And it's really fascinating, the effect that you can get. What I would love to be able to do is write a song from scratch with that in mind. Obviously, like we written the album as a stereo album, and then we were sort of upscaling the stereo mix to Dolby Atmos. So, you can do a lot of really cool stuff, and it definitely sounds different and more spacious. But if you kind of approached it from the start and be like, this sound is going to be like to the back behind me to the left, and this sound's going to be to the front, like you could get some crazy, crazy experience.
It is. Yeah, it's a very different way to approach handling reverb or room sounds.
Right.
We realized, especially when it comes to writing the type of music we do, the synth work that we sort of got into is sort of a lot of reverb was baked in as part of the identity of the sound, and then there is this sound design portion of reverb, and then there's a tonal, which is that plays that sound in a room type of reverb. There's reverb before all that other stuff.
Right.
And we realized that needs to be treated differently when mixing in Dolby Atmos as well, because we have 2 ears and 2 speakers. We got so used. When was it? Pioneer, like in the 50s, like we had stereo or
that's
something
a good
like that.
question. I don't even know.
Yeah. And then I can't remember, but like we got so used to that things almost felt like there was a sound stage. Remember people talk about that's the stage,
right? And
your drummer is in the middle. But now we got to rethink it like you're in the recording studio with them, or you're on the stage with them.
Sure.
Or you're in the orchestra. So then we got to start thinking, where should the drummer be?
And I think the rise of thinking like that probably, really dovetails with the rise of things like virtual reality and virtual spaces,
sure.
Which, obviously with the pandemic, I think there's been a lot of renewed interest in what kind of experiences can be offered that way. And I think I remember talking to the Glitch Mob guys too, that I think there's at least a few clubs in the States that have some kind of, I don't know if it's full Dolby Atmos or anything, but some kind of like surround sound system, which sounded really interesting.
Well, our sound engineer that we work with a couple of times in Melbourne is a sound engineer for, I think it's Russell, Fletch, 170 Russell, that has spatial audio.
Cool.
Oh, I can't remember what it was. Yeah, but he showed me like when I was putting up on SLUMBERJACK story, Instagram story about us doing that. I think he sent a couple of pictures to me privately and videos. He's doing the same stuff. There's like array movements. There is panning patterns that you can do. So yeah, I think it's a thing now.
I'm not completely convinced that the club is the right way to experience that. Like to me, it's like. You want to be focused.
Sat down.
Yeah, you want to kind of be like sat down, either with like some headphones doing the spatial effect with the filtering, or in some kind of like movie theater type or focusing listening environment.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong. I mean, if if it's still loud and pumping and exciting, then why not make it even better?
Well, so then that's an interesting question. Then, if you mixed your album in this format, and the album, I've heard a bunch of the singles of it. There's some bangers on there, some dance floor bangers. What is the process? What is the thought process? Like, how did you have to adjust your mindset to make it in this new format?
So you take it. This is a tough one.
So like, one of the coolest things about this new format is that they kind of force a maximum volume on the whole mix. So they have a limit where, anyone who's technical listening is like, it's negative 18 LUFS is the volume limit, or the loudness limit, that you're allowed. Whereas in a stereo mix, you can push as loud as you want. You can go to zero.
And people do push it, yeah.
Correct. So what ends up happening is there's this thing called the loudness war, which many people have probably heard, where artists kind of fight each other to make their songs sound as loud as possible, given the constraints of what digital can represent. And the result of that is you lose a lot of the fidelity and the quality and the dynamics. So like, everything just kind of ends up sounding like this one volume of just like wall of sound, and you lose the ability to have like, oh, that was like nuances. A really powerful kick drum in comparison to the synth, or like, you can have some really loud moments in contrast with some really quiet moments. You don't get to do that in stereo because you just kind of have to fight this loudness war. Dolby essentially removes that by saying, you know what, everyone has to be at this exact same level. We're not allowing anyone to go louder. And so what we could do is kind of inject some of those dynamics and punchiness back into the mix, and get if we wanted the drums to be really loud in one part compared to the synths, we could do that. Or if we wanted to have certain things coming out really loud compared to other things, and highlight them as sounds, we had the ability to do that. So that was really kind of nice. I would be interested to see what people think, for those more kind of heavy, super aggressive, loud records. Rhythm. How is that going to translate to Dolby? Is part of that sound, is part of the like genre, having that really aggressive mix? Is that part of the genre? Can you do that in Dolby? I'm not sure. I'm sure you can, but
yeah,
to a degree, the mix is kind of part of the sound.
It's true. Although I love the idea of what you're talking about. Like, I think that's how any kind of innovation in our scene happens, whether or not it's like dubstep mixed in Dolby Atmos. But what you're talking about in general is like, well, what if we take some of the elements that we consider integral to a certain sound and try to limit ourselves, try to eliminate that and still work in that style? Those kind of, that's just a awesome way to work in general. I think that's such a cool way to try to make something new. For any producers who are out there listening, it's like, if you want your stuff to stand out, that's a great way to think about doing it. I like these sounds, I work in this style, but what if I do the opposite in one way or another of what's sort of conventional in this, and then what are the results? Like, in a way, I feel like that's kind of what you guys have done with some of your work, that really does skirt the line between kind of what we were talking about before. Is this EDM? Is this pop music? Is this future bass? Like, I think you guys have always been pretty good at not being able to pin yourselves down.
Yeah, I don't think it was a conscious effort. I just think as we got better at music production, it's just the sound design choices became, part of who we are now. Like, I don't think Fletcher and I would go into, pull up a synth like Serum, which is classic in the dance world, and go, well, today we're going to make a gnarly bass growl. Like, it's not something that we do anymore. We tend to look at the song as an idea. So it's different approaches. We've been in the studio with dubstep producers and stuff, and that seemed to be their approach, and that's cool. Like, we learned a lot from that stuff. But
we basically don't do any sound design anymore, really, right? Yeah. No, like, in terms of programming synthesizers, is not something that we have prioritized in this last album at all. We used to be really into it. It's really enjoyable as like a, if you're as a nerdy thing to just get in and twist knobs and play around with and make cool sounds. We did that for very many years. And I think we probably maybe just became a little bored of like starting from scratch every time. And for this album, we were like, let's focus more on the songs and let someone else handle the sounds. Not that we're, I don't want to sound like we're kind of like ripping.
No,
I don't want to make it sound like we're lazy, but there are people who would spend 2 days making a really, really interesting patch, and we can just we can buy those preset packs, or we can, go through we've spent stupid amounts of money on synths and things, and they all come with sounds and presets built into them.
Why not use it?
Why not use it? Exactly. And of course we tweak it to fit our use case. But when I can just open up a sound and be instantly inspired by the sound, a great sound that's already there, I'm like, this is inspiring a great melody, or inspiring a new section of this track, rather than opening up like an initial preset, which is the most boring sound you can possibly think of, and being like, before I even have to write any music, I have to make a sound.
Well, I think what you just said is kind of the key to all of this, which is that what you really should be looking for is A, what's the most fun at the moment? And B, how can I get inspired the fastest? Like, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. The only people who care about, is everything made from scratch, is, all these little like technical distinctions are, other nerdy producers, which shout out to, the other nerdy producers, like that's my tribe. But at the same time, that shit doesn't matter at all. Like there's a
classic joke of like, do you go and skin the goat to make hunt your own goat to make your snare drum skin,
Right. Yeah. And you keep going back and back and back.
And then now you're a farmer. I think Diplo did that with his sounds video, his sounds promo.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Remember that? Yeah, Diplo put out a sample pack, and he goes like, "These sample packs I made myself." He's like, so I started with a snare, and I thought that was not good enough, so I got my own wood to make the thing, and now I have my goat, but I like my goat a lot, so now I'm a farmer. I'm not a music producer anymore. And the end of it, Diplo X sounds like it's hilarious.
Which is funny.
It's like a chicken.
Oh yeah, well, which is really funny because Diplo now in real life both owns chickens. And do you remember when he, years ago, he put out that song called "We Are Farmers"? It was with he was rapping. It was like him and Andy Milonakis.
I missed that.
It was back. I think there's like 2 or 3 Diplo rap tracks out there, and that one of them was called "We Are Farmers."
Oh, that is so good.
Yeah,
but like back to what Fletch was saying, like because we've done those years of nerdy sound design and we enjoy them. I'm not saying it's not enjoyable. It's not as enjoyable to us now, but I know it's enjoyable because we felt it before. And I know it's enjoyable to many people. But having that background allowed us to just open up a preset and within seconds tweak it and tone it to the sound that we want.
Of course,
it's like a guitar, and then we have just the effects pedals.
And like you were saying, man, like you've both evolved as producers and songwriters. Like to me, it would be only logical that the way you write songs would sort of evolve with you as people and artists too. I mean, let's use that idea to talk about the album, because the album's called Dichotomy. And I was saying earlier, I've heard a bunch of the singles off of it. And it, there is obviously, you can hear that dichotomy in it. There's like the song Pain, which is, super like underground sounding like banger, to the single Better Off, which is extremely poppy, like maybe more poppy than I've heard from you guys in the past. In terms of what we were just talking about how you've changed as songwriters, the way you're writing music now, is it easier for you at this point to work in a bunch of different styles? Do you feel like you've been able to expand, the forms you're comfortable in, the ways in which you write songs? Was that sort of part of the intention of putting out an album like this?
Well, so yes is the answer. Like over the years, we've kind of dabbled in a lot of different styles, and tried to sort of hone our skills in those styles. But what we kind of realized is that we sort of looked around and realized that a lot of artists were kind of defining themselves by a BPM, saying like, I'm a house music producer, so like I work in 128 BPM, or I'm a drum and bass producer, which means I do 174 BPM, or dubstep 140. mid-tempo producer, literally like in the name is defining what you do by a tempo. And we, always have felt like that doesn't kind of fit what we want to do. And our DJ sets, we do, 90 BPM all the way up to 180 BPM throughout the whole set. It's just like kind of goes everywhere. And we cause problems for ourselves because we have to do all this extra stuff to like meld it all together and make it flow. But we were like, we want to put a breadth of styles on this album, but still have it all sound like Slumberjack. And I think the thing that kind of ties it all together for us is like the texture of the sounds that we use. I hope people listen to the album and can point at every song and say that still sounds like a Slumberjack record, despite being quite a different style to the one that came before it or the one that came 3 songs before it, for example. So like Memory and Reprise are like house records, traditional house-ish sort of records.
Sort of. It's like 115, 118.
Yeah.
And then you have exactly Better Off, which is a pop song. And then we've got some future bass on there. And like
those trap influences.
Yeah. So lots of different stuff.
Well, yeah. What do you mean? Can we get more specific when you say they're maybe connected by a textural kind of feel?
Yeah, I think it's the way Fletch and myself process sounds. We tend to like the fuzzy detuned synths, so that's sort of prevalent throughout the album, even if it's the different genres. And I think it's just the way we massage the sounds, the way we treat our vocals. And even if the vocals in a banger or in a pop track, it sits similar to us. The way we use reverb as a tool, a point of interest. And yeah, it's weird. But when Slumberjack first started out, we always thought we were doing something different. And I think this is definitely external. People were telling us like, that just sounds so much like you. And then we're like, wait a minute, like Fletcher and I sat in the studio so confident that this is going to make people go, whoa, what a breath of fresh air, right?
Right.
And yet people still go, that's classic, you guys. Like, what do you mean? This is a whole different tempo, a whole different like myriad of sounds. And because of that, I sort of knew in the back of my mind that like we have already developed a style. It's not so much so genre, but we have a way of doing things that no matter what we do, there is a touch to it. And again, I would hate to compare ourselves to like the greats, but for example, if you listen to Timbaland, right? Anything he touches sounds like a Timbaland record, right? It could be a pop song, it could be an R&B song, it could be this straight up like hip hop beats, right? Or again, the greats, Skrillex. He could go house, he could do the Dog Blood stuff, he could do Fuji Opener, and he could do like Would You Ever with Pooh Bear. And it's still, the texture underneath it is like, hang on a minute, that sounds like something Skrillex would do.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, I think it's like just these little tricks, right? Like I was thinking about the examples you were giving, like with Timbaland, there's certain... even the way he mixes records is kind of like a signature thing, or the way that he'll always put in like little snippets of his voice or something,
underneath the drums.
Yeah, all of that kind of thing. Or Skrillex like always finds a way to work in some kind of really interesting like micro sound design-y element. Yeah. Even in the poppiest songs. And you're absolutely right, man. It's those little things that it's literally like an audio signature that producers use. That
I think with Fletch, it's either our drum pattern, our drum fills, and the way we use silences. Arrangement is one of those things too. And I do realize I was just listening to Dichotomy yesterday and all our other discography while I was working out, just to see if like it flowed. And it was sort of like, we have a formula where the end of the song, the final phrase of the song, is everything that you've ever heard into one. It's almost like we presented you with the ingredients, and the final chorus is the dish that we wanted to show you. We wanted you to taste like, that's really yummy coriander. What's the American word for it again?
Cilantro, yeah.
Cilantro, right? And then there is mint, and then there is watermelon, and then finally this is like this great watermelon salad that we wanted you to try. Do you know what I mean? It's like the like, you know what I mean, Fletch? Our final chorus is always the chord progression that we introduce in the verse, and finally it sits on the chorus for the first time, but it will be the last time you hear it too.
Which is kind of a cinematic way of working too. And I think when we talked last time, we were sort of talking about, you know, your guys' cinematic influences and how a lot of your music does sort of end up, you know, having that kind of epic feel to it, even if it's not intentional in the first place.
Oh, it's definitely, I think it was definitely intentional. Fletch and I love the film world, you know, the cinematic world. We always try to make people feel like
grand spaces. I think with the exception of one song on the album, which is Not For You, that was deliberately supposed to be very close and dry. Like when that drop comes in on Not For You, it's like everything's just
right here.
And it's just like bang right there. But with the exception of that track, which was, you know, a very deliberate choice, I think we tried to make everything on the album feels like it exists in this very like grandiose space, like a large area, not without sounding like it's far away from you and wishy-washy, just feeling like it's in a big chamber or a big cavern or something, you know,
or space. Or we talked about this in other interviews where we find the best way to enjoy dichotomy is either in your car or on a pair of headphones on your car on the cliff looking up into the sky, like into the night sky.
I like
that. That'll be a great opening to that'll be a great place to listen to the album, especially the intro.
Well, have you, with that in mind, have you started thinking about how you're going to bring it to the live space?
Yes, we just started talking. We just started discussing on how we would arrange the show. Again, Fletch and I were discussing the separation between having a DJ set and a live set now. You want the fans to be enjoying both. Like you want them to know what to expect if they go to a DJ show. And we have chosen the DJ show to a little bit more energetic, a little bit more party-like, a little bit more not experimental, more dance floor ready. Not saying the live show is a dance show ready, but it's more like going to see a band. But there's not, and we're not doing it exactly like a band. So I guess the key difference between a band and a DJ is the stops in between. Well, at least for us, it's the stops in between, and then the talking. And this is Wonderwall, and you stop playing Wonderwall, right? But it's sort of, the song does end, and then there is a interlude and a transitionary little section before it starts with another one. And we tend to pair songs together and have different sections in a live show. So then there is like a brighter moment and a darker moment, or a moment that's all red. These are just stuff that we have in the last show, but this show we have spoken about the concept. I don't know if we want to give too much away, probably not too much away, but there'll definitely be a dichotomous section in between.
Sure.
We need to sketch it out first before we can look at the visual and the artistic, you know, component, the lighting component in the show.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking about, you know, the difference between a live show and a DJ set, which is a line I know you guys have had to navigate for a long time at this point. I mean, how do you guys view yourselves and the project at this point? Do you see yourselves more as one or the other? Do you see yourselves as fitting into any particular scene or sound more than others at this point?
I mean, we always like to have our feet sort of in both. I think there's a lot of benefits to being able to play a DJ set. You know, like you can do a show where there's a lot of venues where the live show wouldn't make sense. Yeah. You know, the live show is it's an experience. It's grand. It's needs, you know, it's got a lot of lighting and stage kind of production that conveys the message that we want. Like the Dichotomy show is, as Morgan said, it's going to heavily play on this concept of dichotomy, and we've got a whole visual show to go with it, and the lighting, it's all kind of part of this one audio visual experience. And you can't create that just anywhere. You need certain types of venues. But there are shows that we would love to play in cities we'd like to visit and play shows for that don't have the types of venues that we could pull the show off in. So I love being able to have the DJ set because we can still go and play a city or like a smaller city or a regional town where the live show wouldn't be possible. We can still play for those fans and put on a great experience and take our music there. And there's also just, some festivals or shows, people are there to, party and listen to certain heavy type of music. They're not there to, there's a time and place for when you want to go and watch a show, and there's a time and place when you want to just like party and have a party time. So that's why we have these two different shows, because there's a time and a place for everything.
Well, and for you guys too, right? Like sometimes I'm sure you would rather just, play a down and dirty DJ set and go party for a night somewhere, right?
Yeah. And you can, exactly. I would always want to put on the best show for the fans at that time. So, I would never say like, we just do a DJ set so we can go get wasted afterwards, that would never be the thought process. But,
it had to make sense if it's context.
Yeah, if that's the type of show it is where we want to like be able to just like whip out a DJ set at like an after party or something, awesome, let's do that. In terms of being part of a scene, like now more so, I see myself, and we discussed this the other day, see ourselves as, let's view ourselves as, we're electronic. We make electronic music. We're not DJs. We're not trap lords. We're not, we're not like in the bass music scene. Like we just make electronic music, and that doesn't, there are a lot of bands who make electronic music who are not part of the EDM scene.
Yeah.
I think because we kind of spend a lot of time in that scene and doing collabs with artists in that scene, I think we probably will get seen like that for a long time. But if you look at the type of music that we're putting out, it doesn't really fit in the same field as the records that a lot of these artists are putting out. There's a very clear EDM scene and EDM touring circuit in America. And
I don't think we're that.
I think we can definitely play those shows, and we have a lot of fans who go to those shows and would love to see our music there. But I feel like we're not exactly that.
Right.
And of course, everything's arranged. Like, those types of festivals have artists who aren't pure trap music EDM. And I like to think that we can fill that role.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say that, a lot of the artists we've kind of positioned ourselves with and done collabs with are making kind of pure EDM.
Right.
Which I wouldn't say that we are.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in a way, I think is maybe a great position to be in, because it can be obviously it can be hard to sort of place yourself if you don't have a defined scene like you were just talking about. But at the same time, I think that allows you so much more flexibility. It's kind of like it's like a short-term risk for a long-term reward to sort of stay in that middle zone, I think.
Well, yeah, and I also like the idea that we kind of challenge ourselves to write a song that you can listen to in your car or at home or at the gym, but you can also listen to it on a dance floor and have a great time and dance to it. Whereas I think in the past, the trajectory we were previously on in the early part of our career was that we were writing songs for the dance floor. We were writing bangers to be played at festivals and clubs and venues. And I think a lot of artists, when I say like pure EDM, they do that, which is, awesome. Like, and we play their music all the time because they're awesome at writing songs for the dance floor. But I think that our goal is to write songs that work everywhere. And that means that it's not going to be as heavy as like a hectic banger. Right. It also means it's not going to be as poppy as like a straight radio song. Yeah. It's this kind of somewhere in the middle.
Which is, I mean, to take this back to what we started off talking about, we were talking about, all these sort of Australian bands from 10, 15 years ago that fit in exactly that space. And they're still the ones we're referencing today, Yeah. And so to me, that's like, you're probably on the right track with that.
In terms of, we can talk about the stuff that people don't usually want to talk about. It will be like the if you look at it just from a career standpoint too, I'm not saying we made the decision for a career from a career standpoint. It's just something that we liked or were influenced because of, I guess we're from Australia. So, but I could only comment on what we know. And from a business and career standpoint, it seemed like a more extended shelf life for artists to be able to sort of walk that line.
Yeah.
As we can tell in being in the music industry, there are trends and there are ebbs and flows. And, when Skrillex popped up, dubstep was the thing. And then dubstep did die. You can't say that because you'd be murdered by dubstep fans. But like it didn't have its moment. Its moment was not in the spotlight anymore. Something else took over. And then right now you got tech house, but then rhythm came back. So there's this cycle. And are you going to allow yourself to be within the cycle, or are you just going to carve out your own lane? You might not be as like crazy successful in that in these cycles, but in overall on average, I think it's definitely more sustainable. We sort of looked at even like Diplo's career as a reference when we do conferences and panels when we talk about these things. Like he takes the long road, right? He does everything, and people would always question like, why is he doing country now? Why is country and rap together? And before that, what Moombaton and Dirty Dutch and Major Lazer and all this other LSD. But over time, it's just he has amassed all these records under his belt that you just look at him as this guy. It's like Diplo is almost his own genre.
Yes.
Like it's almost like a own thing,
Yeah.
But you need the breadth of all that experience under that brand name. And I guess that's where we want to head. It's like when you say the presets, what genre is the presets? I don't really know, but I know how the presets sound.
Yep. And the energy of it. How maybe it's going to make you feel, that kind of thing, which is it's those intangibles. Like talking about Diplo's career, I mean, he's told me, a big inspiration for him that he looks at is David Bowie, who is kind of that same way, where every single Bowie album, complete reinvention, sounded different, looked different, and sometimes was more successful than others. Not every Bowie album was the smash hit, but because he kept that reinvention and never got tied down with it, that's why we're still talking about him.
Talking about
any of these guys.
Yeah. I guess that's cool.
Coming into our 8th year as Slumberjack, which is like, I'm quite proud of that, the fact that we've been doing this, full time now for like 6. And I think, we've almost like, we've seen cycles come and go. We're like, we've been doing it long enough that we've like been through a few cycles. And so I think, we have been kind of successful in like doing what Morgan said, is like trying not to get too tied up in these ebbs and flows and just continue on doing just what we want to do.
We could easily stop now and make tech house such big foghorn.
Straight. Maybe let's just get the album out first.
Yeah, you save that for album number 2. Yeah. Are you guys stoked to get back on the road? Do you miss that? Was touring? How much do you like touring?
Man, it's like a love-hate relationship, man. Yeah. It's so weird. When we first started, that's all we wanted to do. But dude, how sick would it be to be on tour? Like, look at these guys, so cool. I remember our first tour, we hated the crap out of it.
Really?
Our first tour, we organized it ourselves, and we sort of had to barter this deal with separate promoters to be supporting acts, but really we're not. We're just flying to the city to be opening acts. We're not supporting it.
Right.
We had to pay for it ourselves, stay in motels. I remember a motel had like 3 bunk beds, and I was like, 3 bunk beds for 2 people. This is not a hotel. This is like a backpackers.
Hostel.
It was a hostel. I was like, this is not what I thought touring would be. And then you have we have the experience of touring in Asia. Like that was incredible. Like, man, I would do that again. We were being put up in Shangri-La for like a week, and then we had drivers, and we were eating the best food. We had like a near unlimited usage of financial resources by the promoters. Do whatever you want. We'll pay for it. And then we got picked up by a sports car, and then bang, we're in America. You know, we got to be cleaning poop outside of a toilet in Chicago. That's a whole different story. Like, we couldn't find a hotel, you know, and we were in Orlando and it was hot, but it was pretty sick. And then back to Australia where we were treated like royalties again. Like, it's so hard to explain what touring is to people. Yeah. It's not one good thing. It's just like, it just depends on where you're at. And at the moment, I think I'm still enjoying the rest, but I think Fletch and I sort of now have the capacity to design our touring life a little bit better and a little bit more enjoyable. We have the, I guess, financial resources now to make it less stressful for us. We could manage that better. So, do we love touring, Fletch? I don't know.
I love putting on. I love the feeling of putting on a great show and seeing fans like excited to see the show. I love planning the show and like performing the show itself is great. I don't love like early flights. Yeah. Don't love being away from home for extended periods. Which you know, basically touring Australia now is that for us. We get to fly to a show on the weekend. We have, as Morgan said, the resources to put on a great show and like create genuinely cool experiences, and, you know, see people be stoked that they came and enjoy what we created, and then fly home. So I do. Yes, I love that aspect of it. There are some things that are pretty grim, like early flights, long haul flights, shitty hotels. If you gotta, sometimes you just gotta stay in a shitty hotel, you know.
Yeah. Sometimes it's weird. No matter what level you're at, sometimes you got to stay at a shitty hotel.
Yeah, I mean, even like I'm not going to throw away money. You know, if it's just one night, I'm not going to go stay in some 5-star ridiculous suite. Why did you fucking? Yeah, we still share a room sometimes because why not? Like
we share a room most times. We share a room most times if we are forking out the bill ourselves. Right. It's
you got to be frugal, you know.
Yeah. You really
do,
man.
Frugal that way. Yeah. We have never flown first class other than free upgrades by the airline. You know, we have always flown economy because we're not big dudes. We're not super tall, and you know that we need the space. If any, we do economy X, and not because we want to. It's not because like we are putting in the money, because we now are, you know, platinum frequent flyers, and we get to upgrade to that for, you know, nearly no money. We still do the stuff that small business owners would do, and I think, and I'm very proud of it. I think I gotta say to everybody who's listening, like Fletch has been a great influence on that. Had I not met someone as like what's the word? Integral, but someone as
I can't say the word.
Brilliant, what's the word again? Genius. Yeah.
Wait, what are you again? I think I would have been a little bit more different. I think I would have been like, yeah, we have the money, let's spend it on this stupid shit, you know. But like ever since, you know, being friends with Fletch, I've learned so much about that, and that has also like influenced the rest of my life, where my financial decision makes sense. I need it to be economical and all this stuff. And I honestly, truly believe it's the reason why Slumberjack has lasted 8 years.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, you got to have that balance, I think. Like, do you guys party on the road? Is it pretty restrained?
I think I've seen Fletch drunk a total of 5 or 6 times tops.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I think Fletcher is frozen
we may have lost.
Drunk right now. There you go. Look, he's
maybe this is the 7th time you've seen him drunk.
Yeah, this is the 7th time. You got to wait for him to come. He's there you go. Yeah, like I've seen Fletch like drunk probably like 5 or 6 times, because we don't do it in between tours. We do it at the end. So like, you know, we'll be with other artists. We go like, you know, this is the end of a like a little phase. So, and we don't have a flight till the day after, or our flight's late at 5:00. You know, screw it. Let's just have fun. I remember having a Groove in the Moon after party, and we had like, Holy Shit was a different story, right? Well, we could party in Holy Shit because, but like, because, you know, because of, you know, the person at Fletch is, it has also helped us be pretty healthy. So I remember the first few times, or the first couple of years touring Fletch, I'm like, why is everyone going back so early? Doesn't want to enjoy this? And then I quickly realized now, if I look back, I actually didn't enjoy it. I just did it because everyone was doing it.
Interesting.
Like I don't even look forward to going out in, at night now, going out drinking. But look, if you're over in Perth, I would love to hang out with you to go to a bar, like a nice cocktail bar, no problem.
But
to go to a club.
I will say though, on the flip side of that, Moggs, is that like, my internet was frozen for a second there, but like, I'm not like the biggest party guy. Like, I like to have a good time sometimes, but sometimes I also like, I just don't like, I love having a glass of wine with dinner, but for some reason, I just like, my body has like a very low limit. I think it's like my metabolism. Like I get hungover before the night's even over. Like it just processes it so quickly. and like, I'm like drunk, sober and hungover, like before I even go home. It's like, it's pretty funny. But the flip side of that is that, Morgan, staying later at these things and like hanging out with people, like we were talking earlier about networking, like it is important. Like, yes, it's kind of like, like people poo-poo it sometimes, but like you do need to network and like hang out with people and like make connections. And like, if you do hang around after the show and stay later, or, you make connections and friends and meet people and that helps your career for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, even to pull it back from the analytical side a little bit, just you got to do that at some point to be a part of a community, right? Like if you want to be accepted by a community and participate in the community, you got to put in time in whatever that community is,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like that's the only way to really establish yourself, to meet friends and support, to find a support system, all that.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think we, like, just as an example, we, met one of our close friends in Sydney, Sasha, as Golden Features manager, sort of that way, We were not playing that night. Someone was just telling us what So Not was playing down there in a smaller bar in Sydney with Nina Las Vegas. And we're like, all right, we'll show up. We'll come. And then we went there and then we started chatting. We were having cocktails from a teapot. And then eventually that's how we met. Like we were not, we'd have chosen not to go. And,
that was the very first time we heard one of our records being played in a nightclub. Because Once or Not turned around, saw us there and played our song Felon. And like we were just kids at the time. We're like, oh, this is so cool.
Man, that's such a cool moment, man. Yeah. Do you have any other, this is a random kind of thing, but do you have any other career memories that, not necessarily like milestones, but just, something that just ends up popping into your head or running on a loop a lot, just like memories you think about a lot?
Something that it would, you could say it lives in our head rent free.
Yeah.
Yeah, rent free.
Jeez.
I have one.
Yeah, go on.
I have one. We were opening the ALSLA stage for Stereosonic in Australia. And that was like a huge moment for us because we loved the whole ALSLA and what they were signing and what they stand for. And we heard that Skrillex heard about us. Before the tour, we were featured on his Skrillex Selects playlist. And I remember being on stage with Fletch at the time when we were DJing at a show. And then, don't know why you shouldn't be looking at your phone when you're playing on stage, but I looked at my phone. And it goes like, someone told us like, Skrillex put your song in his playlist. And I showed it to Fletch. I was like, holy shit. Then we met Skrillex after at the festival, but we didn't have the balls to go up to go like, hey, what's up, man? What's SLUMBERJACK? We didn't say anything like that. I was having a conversation with Fletch. What So Not was playing on stage, and Skrillex walked right between us. Because there was a lot of people. He wasn't being rude.
Right.
It was just a lot of people. He's like, just coming through. And I remember just like looking down and looking straight back up. He was wearing a camo jacket. I looked at Fletch. I was like, holy effing shit. That's Skrillex. Like, that was my only star moment. And we had met celebrities in LA. And I never had that same feeling ever again. Even like meeting DJ Snake, I didn't have the same thing. But Skrillex to me was, I was listening to him in my shitty family car in Malaysia as a teenager from a CD that I burned off LimeWire,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like when In for the Kill remix came out and like, Scary Monsters, I was like, and watching him walk past, like it literally, like I had that starstruck moment. And then to meet him later on, and he was such a sweet guy.
Right.
That was the best thing ever.
Oh, man.
To me, that was a career high. Not that it's a career highlight, but like a life highlight even.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I think it's like you don't even know how someone has affected you until you actually are in the same room with them. And all of a sudden, you're acting different or you feel a way you didn't know you'd feel. And it's crazy.
Like this is the guy that I changed I chose not to take on my degree in college. This is the guy that made me make a decision where I would have a 2-3 month silent fallout with my dad,
yeah. Thanks, Skrillex.
Thanks very much, man.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, I think a lot about those like early days, like especially when we were living in Perth and we'd take trips over to Sydney for like these festivals or like conferences and things, and just sort of like early days being exposed to like the world-class talent and seeing them. I remember from that same trip, we were like walking through our hotel and like we looked to the side and it was like Foreign Beggars and Noisia sitting at this table together because it was I Am Legion was playing at the festival. And we just looked at each other like, oh my God, that is just the coolest thing ever.
I was like, that's like 5 people that like you will worship for the rest of your life if you're a musician.
And like, they're just chilling with their crew, like just sitting there having a chat. And like, we even see now, like, not to that level, obviously, but like sometimes Morgs and I will be sitting with our crew at a table and we see people walk past and sort of like sneakily point. And, oh my God, I'm like, it's probably not at the same level, but it's like,
do this.
Take a photo. Yeah.
But it's like, and to me, I'm just a guy, like I'm just a person. And that's probably exactly how they felt when they're just sitting there. But, that was just so cool for us starting out. The very first time we kind of realized that, all these artists are like accessible and around and also just people,
Yeah. Well, and it makes me think too about how we're all kind of just following in each other's footsteps and we're all part of this tradition and this cycle that's been going on since, the beginning of time when people started making art or whatever it is that, it's kind of, I don't know. To me, that's like that's a nice thought too. It's just that, it's cool to be able to see where you've come from where you've been and realize that everyone you looked up to took the same journey. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man. Well, this has been great, man. I always love talking to you guys. Is there anything else we haven't covered? Anything else about the album you want to get out there? Anything else that's on your mind?
Go listen to it. Play it as loud as you can.
Yeah. Exactly.
Actually, not so loud because it's Dolby Atmos.
Well, right, yeah. Unless you're listening in Dolby Atmos, in which case, no dice.
Yeah, no. Drive up to a cliff and listen to our music, and just enjoy a picnic there.
I like that. That's a good take home message. Well, let me ask you this one very, very fluffy question to end this, because I was just super curious. I was just looking at reading up stuff, researching when I knew we were coming to talk again. I found this video of you guys doing magic tricks online.
Is that on Triple J?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. But it was like good magic. Like this was not like, is this a thing? Do you guys do magic on the side?
I do. I was trying to be a magician before a musician. I was sort of doing both. I wanted to be what David Blaine and Chris Angel was on TV. But like it's a tough market to get in. You got to be either from China or from America, and then you got to know the TV execs to do that.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's weird. It's such a cool scene too. It's just like music that you have co-writers and collaborators on, and every magic trick has a title and a name and a patent and a copyright, and it's like an intellectual property to it. And you license them from different writers, inventors.
Right. God, that's fascinating.
Yeah, I love that world. I don't know if you had a chance to interview Madeon at all. Like he's also into magic.
Okay, no, I haven't had him on.
Funny story is that I have met Madeon on the forums, on like magic forums, years before I knew he was Madeon. He was like Hugo something, right?
Right.
Leclerc or something. Yeah, Hugo Leclerc, I think. And he had a piece of magic that he sort of invented in the underground that I really looked up to. I was like, I'm a huge fan. And I also worked on a piece of magic that he enjoyed. And then years later, we met at a Porter Robinson show. We met at the Shelter show in Brisbane. And then we spoke about it. And it's like, you're that guy? And I was like, you're that guy? Like, holy shit. And like, we remember after the Shelter tour show, I was just backstage with him talking for hours. By the time it was done, they've packed up the Shelter production outside. It was, you know how big the Shelter production was.
Oh, yeah.
But I remember Porter, like literally he came and he just grabbed a chair and go this way. And he just sat and just like, listen to me and Madeon talk about magic. And then everyone just like, you guys got to go back to your hotel already. He goes, no, this is way too interesting, man. And we were showing each other moves and tricks and like little techniques we've created. It was fun. So it was,
yeah.
Who else is doing? Who else? There's so many. It's a lot of magicians in the music community.
Isn't that weird? It's kind of like this secret. I don't know if you know this DJ. You probably don't, but this guy Mike 2600. He's a DJ kind of from a different. He has more of like a turntablist, like hip hop background. But he's big into the magic scene. He just released his own deck of cards because he's a graphic designer as well.
Okay.
So I'll send you all the links later if you're interested. But
yes, please.
He's a super sweet guy. And it's just funny, man, because there is some connection between magic and music. And I had no idea what you were talking about with collaborators and the licensing the tricks. That's fucking fascinating.
You could even license a tiny move. It's like, you know, when we sample a song, you got to license a move if it's going to be a big trick. So like David Blaine would perform your trick, but your trick is also sample from another trick. So there's a licensing fee there and all that. It's really cool, man. And everything gets logged into this, like, it's like the history of magic book. There's lots of books and like you start from the very beginning. Like, dude, like you could go all the way back and it will feel like Harry Potter to you. It starts with the occult. It starts with like witchcraft, and they talk about how that thing came about, and then charlatans, and then people who wear turbans and look into crystal balls, and all the techniques that got developed there from con artistry and into then entertainment. It's so cool.
Do you still do it? Do you keep up with it?
I practice. I kind of use it as like, you know how people have fidget tools and fidget balls and stuff. Like cards to me are sort of my fidget when I'm sitting, listening to music and sort of thinking.
That's interesting.
And or I take a coin and I do the coin roll over my knuckles.
You could there's got to be ways you could incorporate some of those skills or some of those like even just ways of thinking into what you guys are doing as Slumberjack. I'm sure
we thought of doing that for our live show, but I just felt like it's going to be cheesy. It should stay separately. Like midway in the show, like bang, Fletcher vanishes and comes back with like a new clothing and then like boom, keyboard's gone. But hey, where's the sound coming from? Like, no, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean maybe not that when you describe it that way. Yeah,
I couldn't figure out a way to do it in a cool way. And there's a certain, like, I guess it's like music too. There's a certain way to present magic. Yeah. And a lot of the traditional ways to present magic has gotten really cheesy.
Which again, I mean, we could tie that into music too, right?
The
like
music
underground versus mainstream, and
yeah. Like you know how there was a moment where everybody was dressing like Swedish DJs.
Yeah, kind of. Wait, what do you mean? And like with the black jackets and everything?
Black jacket, black shirt, black skinny jeans, and like Air Force Ones.
Yeah.
Says the guys both wearing black shirts.
I was going to say in America at least there's a lot of people who never stop doing that.
Yeah, and then there's like then there's the same thing. You keep the same bottom, but you have the same shirt, but now it's long tee. It's a little bit longer now.
Right.
And Magic had that. You know, Magic had people painting their nails black.
Man.
And that was like a thing that we talked about in the underground community. We're like, don't do that, man. Like, you know, it's like, it's enough that people think we're like magicians. Like, ooh, like, can you make this coin disappear? Like, it's already enough that's that. You got to try to not look the part now. Man. It makes it cool.
Well, I gotta stop myself from asking you more questions because otherwise we're gonna be here for another hour. I'm fascinated by this, but we can come back to a magic special later.
Yeah. Get me and Madeon and even Ariel Fletch, Louis Vuitton's friend. Ariel, he's a magician too. Get a bunch of music nerds, magic.
It'd be really fun, actually. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah. It'll be fun.
Yeah, man. Well, it's great talking to you guys, man. It's good to see you. I hope to run into you guys somewhere in real life soon enough.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us, man.
Oh, of course,
Thanks, man.
And
Thank
you're
you so
always
much.
welcome. Anytime. And yeah, looking forward to hearing the whole album, man. Good luck with the rollout, the campaign, getting back out there, all of that.
Awesome.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, no doubt, man. Well, take care, guys. It's great talking to you. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, man. Take care.
All right. Peace, y'all.